On the grand stage of global diplomacy, traditionally dominated by Western powers, a tectonic shift was initiated from an unexpected place. From the heart of West Africa, Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso didn't just enter the scene, he reset the rules of the game. He issued a direct and unprecedented ultimatum to Israel, a 72-hour deadline for the formal recognition of African sovereignty over its own alliances. As the world watched, the response from Tel Aviv was a calculated silence, an indifference that was echoed by Western media, which quickly dismissed the move as mere symbolic posturing. This collective underestimation set the stage for a countermove that no one anticipated, proving that the silence of established power can sometimes be the catalyst for the loudest action. Once the deadline expired, Burkina Faso's response came not through conventional diplomatic channels, but via an austere and powerful broadcast that cut through the night. Without the usual pomp and circumstance, Ibrahim Traoré, in his military uniform, addressed not just a nation, but an entire world. With a deliberate calm that only amplified the force of his actions, he unveiled a three-pronged strategy. First, an economic blow, the immediate freezing of all Israeli business interests and defense contracts in the country. Next, a call for continental unity, convening a summit of 15 African nations to forge a new strategic alliance free from external pressure. Finally, a diplomatic challenge, urging African nations to reconsider their relations with Israel based on the principle of mutual respect. The essence of Traoré's move was encapsulated in his final, piercing statement. Our deadline was not a threat, it was a mirror. With this phrase, he reframed the ultimatum not as an act of aggression, but as an act of forced reflection. He was compelling global powers to confront the reflection of their own complacency and to acknowledge the long history of unequal treatment toward the African continent. The message was unmistakable. This was not about starting a conflict, but about ending an era of silence and complicity. It was a demand for Africa's dignity and sovereignty to be seen and recognized, not as a gift to be granted, but as an inalienable right. Okay, let's just pause here for a second because this is a heavy moment. I mean, imagine you're in that position, with the dignity of your nation on your shoulders. Do you make that call? I've thought about it a lot, and I'd genuinely love to know what your gut reaction is. Let's talk about it in the comments below, and then we'll dive into the fallout together. The shockwaves from the Ouagadougou broadcast instantly reverberated across Africa, sparking a cascade of solidarity. The response was not just symbolic, it was tangible and immediate. Nations like Chad, Mali, and Guinea recalled their ambassadors from Israel, while other countries suspended lucrative infrastructure deals. More significantly, the movement spilled from the corridors of power onto the streets. In cities across the continent, from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, a young, politicized generation took to the squares, not just in support of Traoré, but on behalf of a new vision for Africa. With signs proclaiming respect is non-negotiable, they became the popular face of a continental awakening, demonstrating that Traoré's message was not just the voice of a leader, but the heartbeat of a people. What began as an ignored event quickly escalated into an urgent security crisis in Jerusalem. The initial indifference evaporated, replaced by closed-door meetings and a growing sense of alarm. Leaks from these meetings revealed the shocking admission from Netanyahu himself. We underestimated him. This is no longer about Burkina Faso. It's a movement. Western powers, previously silent, now called for dialogue and restraint. A shift in tone that betrayed their nervousness. The fear was no longer of a simple diplomatic friction. It was the fear of momentum, of an idea that had gone viral and threatened to fundamentally disrupt the established global order and long-standing power dynamics. What the world witnessed was the birth of a new paradigm of African leadership. Ibrahim Traoré was not asking for permission to sit at the global power table. He was building a new table, founded on principles of equality, respect, and self-determination. This new style of leadership refuses to play by the old rules, which have often relegated African nations to a secondary status. Instead of begging for inclusion in a system that has historically marginalized them, this approach demands a fundamental restructuring of the system itself. It is a proactive and confident leadership, one that understands that true sovereignty is not granted but asserted with clarity and courage. In the end, Traoré's silent ultimatum has left a resounding question hanging over the world's capitals. What happens when an entire continent decides it will no longer be ignored? This moment transcends day-to-day politics, marking what may be a historical turning point. It's no longer a matter of if Africa will have a voice, but how loud that voice will resonate and how the rest of the world will adapt to this new reality. The era of deference is over. History is in motion, and for those who refuse to look in the mirror, the future is rapidly moving on without them, powered by the unshakable will of a continent claiming its rightful place in the world. The core of Traoré's address was captured in a single powerful metaphor that would define the entire movement. Our deadline was not a threat, it was a mirror. With this, he masterfully shifted the narrative away from aggression and towards accountability. He wasn't declaring war, but demanding self-reflection from a world that had grown accustomed to ignoring the continent's voice. It was a call for global powers to gaze into this mirror and confront the reflection of their own indifference and the consequences of their long-held policies. The response from fellow African nations was swift and decisive, proving that Traoré's words had struck a resonant chord. Within hours, the diplomatic landscape began to shift. Chad, Mali, and Guinea took the bold step of recalling their ambassadors from Israel, a clear and unambiguous signal of solidarity. Other nations followed suit by halting lucrative Israeli infrastructure deals, translating diplomatic principle into tangible economic action. The government of South Africa, drawing from its own deep history of fighting against systemic injustice, released a powerful statement praising Traoré's courage and clarity. But the most potent validation of the movement didn't come from government buildings. It erupted from the streets. Across the continent, from the city centers of Dakar to the bustling avenues of Dar es Salaam, the youth mobilized. They flooded public squares waving national flags, chanting Traoré's name, and holding signs with messages like "Africa will not be silenced" and "Our dignity is non-negotiable." This popular uprising demonstrated that Traoré was not a lone voice, but the amplifier of a continent's collective heartbeat. Back in Jerusalem, the initial dismissiveness had shattered, replaced by frantic, closed-door security meetings. The silence from Tel Aviv was broken not by a public statement, but by a leaked recording that exposed the government's shock. In the recording, Prime Minister Netanyahu was allegedly caught admitting his critical error in judgment. "We underestimated him," the voice said. "This isn't just Burkina Faso anymore. This is a movement." The indifference had turned to alarm. Observing this escalating situation, Western powers began to cautiously weigh in. The French Foreign Ministry urged restraint, while the European Union called for dialogue. Notably, none of them directly criticized Traoré's actions. Their nervous, carefully worded statements revealed a new fear. It was no longer the fear of a minor diplomatic fallout, but the fear of an unstoppable momentum, a geopolitical shift initiated and controlled entirely from within Africa. What the world was witnessing was the dawn of a new paradigm in leadership. This was a style that doesn't plead for inclusion or ask for a seat at a table built by others. Instead, it is a leadership that builds its own table and sets its own terms, demanding respect as a prerequisite for engagement. It signifies a fundamental break from the post-colonial deference of the past, representing a proactive and confident generation that asserts its own power rather than simply reacting to the power of others. The question that now haunts the established world order isn't just about the immediate next steps. It's a far more profound and unsettling question. How much bigger will this movement get, and how fast? When ultimatums are ignored and long-held dynamics are challenged so directly, the world doesn't simply return to the way it was. It moves forward, and those who fail to adapt risk being left behind by the undeniable current of change. Ultimately, this event transcends simple politics. It is history unfolding in real time. It marks the potential end of an era defined by quiet compliance and the beginning of one defined by a clear, unified and assertive African voice. The continent is signaling that its dignity is no longer up for debate. A mirror has been held up to the world, and the reflection will be impossible to ignore. This is more than just a news story. It's history in motion. If you believe these unfiltered analyses are essential to understanding our changing world, support our channel by hitting the like button and share your perspective in the comments. Most importantly, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a breakdown of the moments that truly define our era.